What's up, everybody? I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching The Sit Down, hanging out with an Academy Award winner, Roger Ross Williams. What's up, man? How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's great to be talking to you.
Great to be talking to you.
So I'm really excited for this project because you're involved with it. We got Liz Garbus, Alex Gibney, and of course, just the subject matter is really intense and really interesting. So how'd this all come together for you, the Innocence Files?
Yeah. Well, it was really started with Netflix. Netflix approached me and Alex and Liz, and I've admired the work of the Innocence Project for a long time. They do incredible work. They've gotten hundreds of people out of jail, exonerated, and so I jumped at the chance. I mean, for me, I was shocked that someone hadn't done this already, you know, because these stories are so powerful, and there's a happy ending at the end. There's a very positive emotional moment that happens at the end of these stories when someone's exonerated. You can't kind of beat that, like, emotionally.
I mean, it's unlike anything else. I've talked to a couple people who've been exonerated, and it's amazing just the journey they go on, from going to prison for something they didn't do to having their whole lives change when they thought they'd be there for the rest of their lives. So what was it like unpacking those parts of the journey?
You know, it was tough emotionally. I direct the first 3 episodes, which most of that takes place in Mississippi, in Knoxville County, and it's a place with poor African-American community. Mostly everyone lives in trailers. You can feel the legacy of slavery all around you. And when I remember the first day when I sat down to talk to some of the residents there, they were playing a card game, and one of them said to me, white people make the laws and we just try to stay out of the way. And that's the attitude there. And when, with LaVon Brooks, when he was convicted, he just gave up. He just said, oh, well, that's it. My life is over. I'm just going to give up. And he just sat there in prison for 18 years.
And then how did he first start the process in terms of trying to get his charges overturned?
It actually was, so he was convicted of murdering a 3-year-old girl. After he was convicted, 2 years later, another 3-year-old girl turns up dead in the exact same way. And another guy, Kennedy Brewer, gets convicted of that crime. And they didn't think, well, maybe they thought it's a copycat, but they didn't think that maybe the same person could have done those 2 crimes. It couldn't have been LaVon because he was in prison. So Kennedy Brewer wrote a letter to the Innocence Project. And when Peter Neufeld, the founder of the Innocence Project, and his team got that letter, Peter was blown away. He said it was a very powerful letter. And with Kennedy Brewer, they had DNA evidence, and they did a DNA test, and his DNA was not on the victim. So he was exonerated. And when they started to look back through the possible suspects, they found someone who they had interviewed and sort of let go, and he ended up being the person. He confessed to both murders. Wow. Which got LaVon Brooks out of prison. And we interviewed LaVon. We rushed down because LaVon got out of prison, and not too long after that, he got cancer. And we rushed down to interview him, and he since has passed away. And before we even sort of went into production on the Innocence Project, Jeff Martz, the series producer, he's like, we got to go down there and grab this. We just spent our own money and go down there because he's not well. And we got this really sort of powerful interview with him before he passed away. So after the injustice of his life, he ends up getting out and dying of cancer.
So how long was he out before he passes away?
He was out for a number of years, almost 10 years, I believe.
Gotcha.
He was out because they got him. Both him and Kennedy Brewer got $500,000, which was $50,000 a year, was about to run out, and which, you know, $50,000 a year, you know, it's not that much. They didn't have any, and because they didn't qualify for Social Security because they hadn't worked their entire life, they were penniless. They had nothing.
What's the most fascinating part of all this to you? Because you talk about like the conversations locally going on in Mississippi, the criminal justice system, the Innocence Project. Like, what piques your interest the most in terms of peeling back the layers here?
I think, you know, I mean, I come from a community not unlike the one in Mississippi, in Pennsylvania, and a lot of my friends and family are behind bars. I've made other films about the mass incarceration crisis in America. But what struck me about this was the way they used junk science to lock people up. I wasn't quite aware of how extensive and how all of this junk science had been disproven, and bite marks, which has been totally debunked, is still admissible in 49 states.
Wow.
So states don't want to debunk that, because then they would have a duty to correct. And that would open a can of worms. And lots of people have been convicted by bite mark evidence. So they would be really opening themselves up to a lot of, you know, a lot of problems. So it's a huge injustice. And I think that, you know, with this series, these stories are just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many people behind bars for crimes they didn't commit in the country that has the largest mass incarceration rate in the world, and 1 in every 3 Black men end up behind bars. So we're dealing with a huge crisis in the country, and hopefully this will open people's eyes about it, and people will, like, you know, care.